Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. I walked out onto that stage like it was a courtroom, not a ballroom. No intro, no lights shifting, just the mic waiting. My heels tapped once against the wood, loud as a gavel in that fake lavish Marriott conference hall in downtown Atlanta. My father stood to the side, beaming like he'd won a damn Nobel. This whole gala was for him. Martin Rayner, titan of banking, genius CEO, mentor to 1,000 greedy little mini-marts. He'd just wrapped a 10-minute speech about legacy and vision, and then added, and now for something lighter, my daughter Karen, she always liked dramatic readings as a kid. That was it. Not she's an investigator with the DCO. Not she helped uncover 3 separate fraud networks. Just some daughter with a flair for high school drama. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I didn't flinch, I didn't smile. I stepped up in a simple black sheath dress, no jewelry, hair tied back. I looked like I was going to deliver a eulogy, which wasn't far off. I unfolded a printed sheet, 1 page, standard letter size, no title, and I started to read, on or about May 15th, 2019, the board convened for a discussion regarding pre-loss strategies. Notes from that session include, projected sacrifice rate is within tolerance, and quote, staff-level fallout is unfortunate but manageable. The first line didn't land right away. Maybe the wine dulled their hearing. I kept going. A senior consultant raised concern over legal thresholds. The response, attributed to a key executive, was, we need to stop thinking like auditors and start thinking like survivors. The fork stopped moving. One woman set hers down like it had burned her hand. The projector screens behind me still showed a slideshow of my dad shaking hands with presidents and kissing babies outside Wells Fargo branches. A third party, initials RH, later submitted this summary. This is not caution. This is orchestration. If I vanish, let someone speak. That's when I saw it. The corner table near the stage, senior board members. Gray suits, tight faces. One of them stood, hands shaking. Stop, he said, loud enough that even the servers froze mid-pour. I did stop, just long enough for everyone to look his way. He turned to my father. His voice cracked. That's the internal memo from the Altia inquiry, the buried one. My father blinked, didn't move, didn't breathe. His eyes darted from me to the mic to the board member like the whole room had started spinning. I didn't step down. I turned the page over, held it in the air, and said into the silence, this memo was never approved for release, but it was never untrue. Then I walked off stage. No applause, just knives and forks still frozen in the air. I knew this was coming the second I saw his name on my phone. It was a Tuesday afternoon, raining hard outside my office in Arlington. I'd just closed the file on a misused pension fund out of Illinois, already half drained by the time we caught it. The call came through with no text, just Martin Rayner. I answered on the 3rd ring. They need someone to fill a gap, he said. No hello, no pause. Figured you could do a reading. 10 minutes. Light stuff. Gala programs all locked in. He sounded like he was ordering printer paper. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the wall in front of me, the one with the framed memo from a clean audit I once led, signed by a man who later got indicted anyway. Reading what? They didn't say. Something fun. You used to like that drama crap. Just keep it clean. It's between dinner and the keynote. And this was your idea? It was a need. I filled it. Don't make this a thing. His voice always had that clipped edge, like every conversation was a briefing he didn't have time for. He could have asked anyone to do it, but asking wasn't his thing. Assigning was. Sure, I said, calm as a flat line. I'll handle it. He hung up right after I said it. No thanks. No interest in what I've done for the last 12 years. Not even fake pride. Just the assumption I'd fall in line, like always. I stared at the phone a long time after the screen went dark. In my inbox was an encrypted file I'd opened a dozen times but never out loud, a redacted email from a burner account tied to an internal leak during the Altia collapse. The email was never formally included in the final report. Too risky, too specific. I kept a printed version in a folder labeled RH and locked it away in a drawer I didn't let interns touch. It wasn't flashy, no dramatic reveal, but the language, cold, precise, a kill shot in black and white text. Losses were known, not estimated. Human sacrifice was calculated. Executive response, suppress. Final quote: "If I vanish, let someone speak." My father didn't know it, but he'd been one of the executives who signed off on burying that entire trail. Back then, he didn't even recognize the internal oversight unit I worked for. Told the press there was no such internal watchdog, just rumor, just noise. That wasn't noise, that was me. And now here he was, handing me a live mic in front of every white-collar monster who'd once used my silence as a shield. It was poetic. But I didn't think about poetry. I thought about leverage. 2 weeks out, I pulled the memo out of the drawer and laid it flat on my desk. I made a clean copy, redacting nothing. Just one page, black font, double-spaced. I stared at it so long I had it memorized by morning. That night, I typed out a version formatted for speech, not legal, not stiff, just words the way they were meant to be heard. Naked, clear, fatal. In my closet, I already knew the dress I'd wear. Black, simple, sharp neckline, no distractions. If the night was going to be about image, then I'd walk in like a shadow no one could ignore. Back at the office, I called a colleague. Not a friend, just someone from the old Signal Group days who owed me quiet favors. "I need verification," I said. "Source initials are RH. Ties to Altia. Do we have chain of custody notes still stored anywhere?" There was a pause. "Karen, you're not opening that again, are you?" I never closed it. They didn't argue, just said they'd check what was left in the old offsite. That weekend, I drove down to Georgia early. My father hadn't asked if I was bringing anyone. Of course he hadn't. He knew I wouldn't. There was no +1 in this war, no allies, only the mic, and the moment, and the page I'd already printed twice, tucked into the black folder under my arm. The truth wasn't going to beg for permission. It was going to speak, because I would. The first thing they told us when we joined Signal Group was this: if your name ends up in the news, you did it wrong. We weren't supposed to exist. No titles, no LinkedIn profiles, no contact info. Just initials, burner emails, and vault-secured case files with layers of clearance that even half the department couldn't touch. We were the ones who watched the watchers. I got recruited at 26, pulled out of a junior compliance role by a woman with a steel voice and zero tolerance for excuses. She told me I had instincts for rot. She wasn't wrong. Over 12 years, I helped expose shell companies, fake regulatory filings, and one foreign-owned hedge fund that used employee retirement funds like poker chips. But nothing touched Altia. When that hit, it was chaos behind closed doors. Stocks were crumbling, public trust was collapsing, and inside our department, someone high up ordered a lockdown on every channel. No emails, no cloud access, manual file pulls only. Our team was split into triads. I was paired with 2 others, one analyst, one forensic specialist. We worked 16-hour days in a dark sub-level room beneath the DC office. No windows, no badge scans. Everything had to be off-grid, and we found it. A string of internal approvals tied directly to loss planning. Executive meetings with full knowledge of what was coming. One email even referred to lower-tier staff as inevitable fallout. It was clear, and it was horrifying. I flagged the file for escalation. That same night, our access was revoked. Doors locked, phones bricked. Next morning, we were told Signal Group was reorganizing. Translation: erased, no press release, no thank you. Just a quiet kill order on our existence. 2 weeks later, my father went on national television and said, there was no secret oversight team. That's conspiracy talk. My company follows public law, not internal spies. That's what he called us. He knew. When I saw the clip, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on my apartment floor, watching him lie to the camera with that CEO confidence like nothing we uncovered mattered. He'd once told a reporter I wasn't a real lawyer because I didn't argue in court, because I didn't wear heels to marble buildings and yell at juries. I kept quiet. I swallowed it. But I never forgot, especially not the last message from the final source we had, the one who signed their emails, RH. The account was clean, anonymous, impossible to trace. But the language? It stuck. One sentence in particular: "You're the last one who knows. Don't let them vanish." It was written like a farewell, like they knew the curtain was closing. We never heard from them again. But that line, that one line, was burned into me. It was the reason I never left the department, even when most of the old team scattered. It was why I kept the Altea file in my private archive, even when leadership told us to shred everything not tagged approved chain. That line was the reason I said yes to my father without hesitation. Because if he wanted a stage, I'd give him one. And if they thought I was still quiet, still obedient, still buried under his legacy, they were wrong. I was never the speech. I was the fuse. I opened the file again that night with the lights off. Just my laptop glow and the low hum of the fridge across the room. The memo looked the same as it always had. Courier font, plain formatting, blacked out names at the top. But now I read it like a script. From redacted to redacted subject, Altea risk consolidation. Losses projected in Q2 are not accidental. Internal review confirms premeditated downflow. Assets sacrificed for board-level containment. If I vanish, let someone speak. No emotion, no begging. Just a surgical confession written by someone who already knew they weren't walking away from it. I'd read it 100 times since we first got it. But that last line, if I vanish, let someone speak, never lost its grip. It wasn't dramatic. It was dry, flat, resigned. That's what made it hit harder. This wasn't a threat or a plea. It was a quiet order. I didn't practice in my office. I couldn't. That place had too many ghosts and too much recycled air. So I took the memo, printed, folded, creased down the middle, and I went to a place I'd found by accident 3 years earlier. Just outside the Farragut North Metro Station in D.C., tucked between a bus stop and a hot dog stand, there's a bronze plaque bolted into the stone wall. It's barely bigger than a license plate. No flowers, no photos, no attention. It reads, "In memory of those lost to financial fraud, names withheld. Voices silenced, truth delayed. Nobody ever stops to look at it." Except me. It became my rehearsal space. I stood in front of it after dark, when the train slowed and the suits went home, and read the memo aloud. No mic, no spotlight, just me and the plaque. Losses projected in Q2 are not accidental. The words echoed off the concrete like whispers. I didn't need to act. The words didn't need help. They carried their own weight. Assets sacrificed for board-level containment. I tightened my grip on the paper. My voice didn't shake. I made sure of that. If I vanish, let someone speak. I looked down at the plaque again. Names withheld, voices silenced. The person who wrote this, R.H., they hadn't just vanished. They'd been erased, strategically, completely. But this line, this memo, somehow it slipped through, and I'd kept it safe long enough. The next night, I returned and read it again. Then again, the next week. Not once did anyone stop to ask what I was doing. No one looked twice. To them, I was just another woman muttering to herself downtown. But I wasn't rehearsing for them. I was preparing for the moment when someone would be listening. And the more I said those words aloud, the more they stopped sounding like someone else's message and started feeling like my own. I folded the page carefully, tucked it back into the folder, and ran my hand over the plaque one last time. This was never about me. It was about the ones they buried. And the silence they thought would outlive us. The ballroom smelled like fresh carpet glue and over-polished silver. I stepped onto the stage in jeans and a black tee. No makeup, no spotlight. Just overhead fluorescents buzzing like old vending machines. The sound tech was adjusting mic levels, eyes half open, bored out of his mind. A few staff walked around in tuxedo shirts and catering aprons, laying out name cards and folding napkins into sharp triangles. No one looked twice at me. I picked up the mic, held it close, and said one line into the empty room. If my silence is required, may my truth outlive me. No echo, just the words falling flat against white walls and gold trim. A couple staff glanced up from the back, confused for half a second, then went right back to setting tables. I repeated it once, slower. If my silence is required, may my truth outlive me. It wasn't part of the memo exactly, not in that form. It was a line I pieced together from the fragments R.H. left in the attachments, almost like a signature. I liked the weight of it. The tech gave me a quick thumbs up and called out, "Mike's good. You're set." Then walked off to the side to mess with cables. I stayed there for another minute, just looking out at all the empty chairs, hundreds of them, each one tagged with the name of someone who never gave a damn about people like R.H. I stepped down, walked off stage, heading for the back exit that led to the parking ramp. That's when I saw him. Older guy in a maintenance uniform, gray coveralls, steel-toe boots, name patch said Ray. He was standing just outside the hallway near the utility cart, arms crossed, staring at me like he was waiting for something. I slowed. He didn't say anything. He just rolled up the sleeve of his left arm, calm and deliberate, and held it out for me to see. Right above the wrist, faded into time and age, was a small black tattoo, SG7, clean letters, no border, no decoration, just the mark. My breath locked up for a second. Nobody talked about the tattoos. They weren't official. We were never allowed that. But some of the old Signal Group agents, the lifers, got them anyway, usually after disbandment. Quiet defiance in ink. I looked him in the eyes. He gave one short nod. No words, no questions, just the nod, like a salute or a confirmation. He remembered. He knew. I nodded back. He lowered his sleeve, grabbed the mop bucket, and walked away like nothing had happened. That moment hit harder than any mic check. Because after all the silence, all the buried files, all the people who called us conspiracy nuts or internal fiction, that mark on his wrist said what no press release ever would. We were real, and we weren't gone. The ballroom was full now. I stood behind a curtain stage left, listening to the scrape of silverware and the low thrum of artificial laughter echoing off crystal chandeliers. Every chair was filled. Bank executives, board directors, retired regulators, cameras mounted on tripods, lanyards swinging from polished necks. The announcer's voice cut through the noise. Before we bring out tonight's keynote speaker, please welcome a short interlude from our honoree's daughter, Karen Rayner. A few claps, casual, polite. I walked out slow and steady, black dress, folder in hand. I didn't smile. My father sat at the center table, raised slightly above the others. His jaw was set, mouth tight like he didn't like surprises. He nodded once. I didn't nod back. No music played, no video rolled, no slide deck with cute childhood photos of me in tap shoes. Just me and the mic. I opened the folder, one page, no title, no footer. I looked out over the room, a sea of expensive fabric and aging egos. Then I started. On May 15th, 2019, a closed session was held among select executive staff and Altea board members. This session included pre-loss evaluations, internal risk projection thresholds, and planned exit timelines for personnel considered operationally expendable. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. A fork clinked against a plate. Then nothing. Quote from an internal strategy note, "Some will not survive Q2 attrition. Acceptable if necessary." The room didn't shift all at once. It was slow. One person stopped mid-bite. Another looked up from their table program. At the corner table near the bar, two men in dark suits turned their heads in sync. A follow-up comment from an attendee with direct reporting access read, "We must contain discussion. If staff begin asking questions, steer narrative toward market volatility." I saw one woman lower her glass without drinking. Her hand hovered midair. I locked eyes with no one, but I felt them. Final line in the attached correspondence, author unknown, signature RH. "If I vanish, let someone speak." That was the fracture. A man stood, older, stiff-backed, hair thinned out to silver. He looked like every magazine cover of corporate success I grew up resenting. His voice came out uneven. That's the Altea memo. The unapproved version. Nobody clapped now. Nobody blinked. He turned toward my father, face pale. "You told us this was destroyed." "That it didn't exist." My father didn't answer. He was staring at me, still as stone. I couldn't read his expression, just that his lips had pulled slightly apart, like his breath caught halfway out. He knew what I was reading. He knew. I kept going. An anonymous account flagged this summary under internal ID trace, SG7-RED-1142. The trace was shut down 72 hours after submission. No follow-up recorded. Someone in the back stood up, looking around like they couldn't decide whether to leave or lunge. My voice didn't crack. My hands didn't shake. This document was never published. It was never cleared, but it was never disproven. I folded the page, closed the folder, and said the last line into the mic plain as air. "This is the voice of someone who disappeared. I'm not disappearing." Then I stepped back. No applause, just silence. But not the kind you get when people are bored. This was a silence that sucked the air out of the room. Then came the murmurs. Quiet, confused at first, then sharper, louder. Words I couldn't hear, but tones I recognized. fear, anger, realization. Someone knocked over a wine glass. I saw a woman in a blue dress reach for her phone with both hands like she couldn't tap fast enough. My father still hadn't moved. His eyes were locked on mine like he thought I'd vanish if he stared hard enough. But I didn't flinch. I just walked down the steps, folder tight at my side. No one stopped me. No one dared. I was halfway through a stale hotel bagel the next morning when my phone rang. No ID, just unknown caller. That wasn't unusual. I answered with a flat, "This is Karen." A pause. Then a man's voice, clipped and formal. "Miss Rayner, this is regarding your appearance last night. We'd like to speak with you privately. Can you be in DC by 2 p.m. today?" He didn't say who he was. I asked, "Are you with the department?" "We're attached to a financial integrity task unit reporting through the SEC. Name won't mean much. You'll get the location by secure text in 5 minutes." Then he hung up. No questions, no small talk, just business. I was already packing before the message came through. A single line with an address near Judiciary Square and a note. "Bring your source material." I drove straight from Atlanta, no music, no calls. Just silence, and the hum of tires and the click of the folder buckle on the seat next to me. By the time I got to the building, unmarked, gray, forgettable, the sun had started to drop behind the Capitol dome. A woman in a dark blazer buzzed me through a locked door and led me down a narrow hallway to a windowless room. 3 people were seated at a table. One man in his 40s, sharp eyes, clean-shaved. One woman with graying hair and a laptop open in front of her. The third younger, silent, watching me too closely. The man leaned forward. "We'll be direct." "That document you read last night, how did you get it?" I sat down calmly, placed the folder on the table, and opened it. "I was part of the oversight team assigned to Altea," I said. "Signal Group 7. They didn't speak right away. The room stiffened. The younger agent squinted. "That's not real." I looked him dead in the eye. "It was very real. You've just never been cleared to see it." The woman with the laptop looked at the others, then back at me. "We were told it was dissolved." Internal friction? I let out a breath. They called it friction. It was suppression. Orders came down fast. Files were pulled. Access scrubbed. We were told to disappear. The man at the head of the table rubbed his jaw, staring at the memo in front of him. "This is the unapproved version," he said. "We didn't even have confirmation it was drafted. It was submitted through a blind internal channel. Signature block RH. Someone inside that boardroom didn't want to be part of it." The woman asked, "Why now?" "Because you all forgot," I said. "And he?" I pointed to the memo. "Didn't." They exchanged glances. No one challenged me. Then the lead investigator spoke again. "Miss Rayner, as of this morning, we've opened an internal review into Martin Rayner's knowledge of concealed fraud within the Altea collapse." He said it carefully, but I didn't miss the shift. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was movement. It was power finally turning around to face itself. I sat back in my chair. "Good," I said. "It's about time." 2 days later, I got a silent clearance code and a set of directions that weren't on any GPS app. The archive was in Fairfax, Virginia, an unmarked government storage facility buried behind a trucking depot and shielded by nothing but trees, chain link, and a badge scanner older than my car. Inside, the air was stale and dry, like it had never touched daylight. A handler in plain clothes led me through 3 locked doors, didn't say a word. At the end of the hall, she gestured toward a row of gray file drawers and walked away. There was a tag taped to one drawer near the bottom. SG7. Closure justification. No key, no thumbprint, just a latch. Like they didn't think anyone would bother. I opened it. Inside was a sealed manila folder, fat with layered tabs and coffee stains. Someone had shoved it shut in a hurry. I sat at the folding desk nearby, cracked the folder open, and saw it immediately. My father's name. Typed clean at the top of a signed memo. Subject: Dissolution of SG7 Oversight Subgroup. Signed, Martin D. Rayner, EVP Executive Risk Review. I kept reading. The next document listed SG7 personnel numbers, flagged our comms activity during the Altea investigation, and gave reasons for immediate disbandment. But that wasn't the worst part. A red stamp across the second page read, RH, dispensable asset, do not preserve identity. I froze. I read it again just to be sure. They didn't just ignore the whistleblower, they labeled him disposable, not unreliable, not unverifiable, dispensable. A human being turned into a footnote. Then came another file, more detailed. Clean formatting, high-level language. Title, Narrative Stabilization Plan. It was a proposal from corporate PR and executive council. The point? Reframe SG7's existence as unverified speculation, plant alternate stories in industry blogs, and slowly replace whistleblower language with general compliance challenges in all public records. It was erasure, cold, strategic. The last page listed recommended talking points for press interactions. The first one made my skin crawl. Signal Group was an experimental compliance model that proved too aggressive and was eventually phased out in favor of scalable internal audit training bullshit. We weren't phased out. We were killed off because we got too close. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel heat in my face. I just took out my phone, turned off the wireless, snapped 3 fast photos, and tucked everything back exactly how I found it. No drama, no second glance. I stood, closed the drawer, and walked straight out of that building. I didn't need to stay there. I had what I came for. Proof. In his own hand. The envelope was thick, soft paper. The kind people use before email made everything cheap. No return address. Just my name, handwritten, on the front in a narrow slant. I knew before I opened it that it wasn't official. This wasn't from the department. This wasn't another subpoena or sealed request. It was personal. I sat at my kitchen table, peeled the flap slowly, and unfolded 2 pages. The writing was neat, steady. Every letter shaped like it mattered. Dear Miss Rayner, my name is Marianne Hart. I'm writing because someone sent me a clip of your speech from the gala. I didn't understand most of it. I'm not a finance person. But when I heard the line, "If I vanish, let someone speak," I stopped breathing. My son Robert wrote that exact line in his journal. I still have it. I read it once a year on his birthday. He vanished in the spring of 2020. His apartment was empty. No note, no answers. Just that journal. He worked in a building with no windows. He never told me much. Said his job was dull but dangerous. I thought he was joking. When I heard your voice say his words, I knew. That was him. That was my son. Thank you for not letting the silence win. You don't know me, but I know this much. He wasn't just lost, he was taken. And someone out there needs to be held accountable. He believed someone like you would come. I think he hoped it, maybe even planned on it. From a mother who never got to say goodbye. Thank you. Marianne Hart. I sat with the letter open for a long time. My thumb pressed into the corner of the page, just to remind myself it was real. I remembered the last time we heard from Robert. It was a corrupted voice file, hidden inside a password-locked archive buried in Altea's internal server. The audio was rough, digital static cutting through half the words. But the last 4 were clear enough to feel like a punch to the ribs. Speak when I can't. That line had followed me for years, and now it had a mother behind it. I pulled out a blank note card. No logo, no official stamp, just ink and paper. I wrote, he wasn't alone. He still isn't. Then I sealed it, addressed it by hand, and walked it down to the mailbox myself. 3 months later, I stood in front of a half-filled conference room with a dry erase marker in one hand and a pair of reading glasses I didn't need in the other. No camera crew, no branded lanyards. Just 10 interns from a new compliance rotation program, scribbling notes like their futures depended on every word. We weren't teaching prosecution. This wasn't about courtrooms or convictions. It was about recognition. What buried truth looks like in plain daylight. What silence smells like when it's been scrubbed and polished. How to spot a memo that's been too perfectly redacted. How to listen when someone says, it's probably nothing, and no, it's probably everything. After class, as they packed up their bags and shut their laptops, a young guy lingered near the podium. Fresh face, nervous hands. He looked at me, then glanced away. Then back again. Sorry, he said, clearing his throat. Are you the one who read the memo? The memo? I held his gaze for a second, then I nodded. That was all. He smiled a little, nodded back, and left without saying another word. I didn't need to explain it. Not anymore. That night, I took the long way home. Parked near Farragut North, walked up the steps past the hot dog vendor and the trash bin always overflowing by 6 p.m. The plaque was still there. Same size, same color, same chipped corner on the bottom right. In memory of those lost to financial fraud names withheld. Voices silenced, truth delayed. I didn't bring flowers. I never do. Just my voice. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the same folded page I'd read at the gala, smoothed it once against my palm. Then I read one final line. Even if no one listens, the record remains. My voice didn't echo this time, but it didn't feel empty either. I stood there a minute longer, looking at nothing, letting the cold creep through my sleeves. Then I exhaled. Some truths don't make headlines, they make echoes. And echoes, I've learned, don't vanish.